Hi there. Filming on the first Game of Thrones prequel pilot has begun, the one on the Long Night by Jane Goldman. This is a catch-up video on all the filming news between spring and mid-July 2019, so these are the main points I'm going to cover in it. Start with an overview of filming locations in Northern Ireland, where they filmed before multiple times, and where we've been seeing filming activity for the prequel pilot now. Rest will be a chronology of prequel set reports, which break down into first the preliminary sightings we had from around April to June, when we were starting to see set construction, some filming signs. And then filming truly began in late June, and we already got some spy photos out of that. And then someone had a spy photo of a sign that confirmed that the title they're using for it is Blood Moon, not The Long Night, which is what Martin wanted, and we're not sure if that's a production code name or the real name, but there were rumors coming out that this is what they're calling it, and then they were confirmed by these spy photos that their signs say Blood Moon with a logo on them. After that, it seems the real heavy core of filming was the first 2 weeks of July. They were starting stuff before that, but all the main cast members that we know of were appearing in Northern Ireland to film it the first week of July, so it seems a lot of heavy stuff was happening then. There's a few more detailed spy photos from there. They get more detailed the further we go. And because this is ongoing news coverage, I wrote this as a longer video, but so much was coming out and I'm backlogged. I'm going to end with briefly talking about that when we saw their schedule for July, they said, oh, they're going to be filming in Italy. And a lot of photos came out about that just today, so I'm going to split that off into a new video. I'm going to introduce it at the end of... There's all these things we're seeing of Stark and Lannister news in Italy, and George R. R. Martin had more comments. That's going to be video number 2, but this is setting up that as we move forward covering this. Sorry I'm backlogged. There was a power outage in my neighborhood, so I wasn't able to do videos for a while. So this is covering everything up to early July when Martin said stuff and they were showing the Italy thing. Now, if you're new to all this, I have an ongoing playlist of videos about the Long Night prequel on my channel. It's actually a couple of video series. I lumped them all together under stuff related to the Long Night. So please check those out. Go to my channel, look at my playlists. And so far, I actually have 2 series in there. The most recent of these 2 was casting report videos I'd made whenever new announcements rolled out from late October through January. So if you haven't seen those already, check those out, but we're in the filming phase now, so this is a new series. We finished the casting videos, this is the filming videos. So for those of you who were following this when I was doing the casting report videos, what I said when I left off in those is that I'm not going to make videos for every little thing, but wait until enough news accumulates to make it worth making a video and make it worth your time. So quality versus quantity, if we got some giant, really important spy photo, just one image, but really important, that would get a whole video. But this is a lot of little news that accumulated from April to June. So it was building up to the point where it merited a recap video, because just one little, yup, this sure is some simple wooden buildings they're building, and it seems like a generic medieval village. That alone didn't merit a video, you see. So if we get a really interesting spy photo or something after this, I'm going to make a quick 5-10 minute video going, wow, this new thing came out. So if this is long, it's because it's the introduction. I'm setting things up. And without season 8, without a new Game of Thrones season coming out, I think we have nothing but time on our hands, so I hope you all have time to go through all of these. But the ones after this will be shorter, because this is just setting up a couple of months worth of stuff. So this is the catch-up on all filming news between spring and mid-July. Now, again, for all the new people, also in my channel playlist of videos about the Long Night prequel, the first series I did before the casting news was a long series on why the Long Night prequel is a bad idea. That's its name. A bad idea in general principle. And I want to warn you not to get attached to this. I am not trying to hype this prequel. Do not give in to blind hype. I'm trying to warn people about it. It's just like the blind hype the news had going into Season 8. Everyone pouring their hopes into it because they knew nothing about it. It's a blank slate. They can just project on whatever they want. And that works in their favor. It's not an accident that they're not telling us that much about this. Because then everyone just imagines the perfect prequel. Yeah, even casual fans who never knew the books and don't really know that much about the Age of Heroes and Long Night are just sort of imagining a good TV season on the scale of Season 3 or something, or just whatever in their mind that they think of as a good TV season, without any basis in reality, just like people poured their hopes into Season 8. What is Goldman actually doing? I'm not sure. So, at the very least, guys, it won't be the perfect version each person custom imagines in their own head. So why am I reporting on it? To hold them accountable. Such is the purpose of journalism. The failure of Season 8 of Game of Thrones wasn't some surprise. It was the last in a long series of humiliations and failures which became drastically apparent from Season 5 onwards. And I can understand conceptually how people who gave into the hype were genuinely excited after Season 6. Like, if someone who honestly liked Season 6, I can see and sympathize that they were looking forward to Season 7. Why would they research criticisms? What really aggravates me are the professional critics, and you talk about this in the comments. It's people who are people you look up to and respect. It's not just the slobs you see in message boards. It's like major YouTube channels and like media journals, print media journals, professional critics who openly acknowledged this season is bad. Like Season 5 was bad. People who didn't like Season 7. And their answer was to just stop reporting on it. As if that made the problem go away or something. That a lot of book fan sites were so disgusted with Benioff and Weiss that they just said, we're not going to report on this anymore. Does that make the bad man go away? I don't know. Let them destroy the reputation of this. There are critics who report on stuff they don't like all the time, like Star Wars or diversity in superhero comics or whatever. And now they're saying, well, we don't report on it because we don't like it. It's, you got too close to this, and it's painful for you to report on, and you need to maintain your objectivity. So that's what gets me most. It's the blind hype reporters I can kind of get. It's the people who go, I'm not going to report on this. Hey, if you don't like it, go away. It's other comic book series industry, Star Wars, other franchises wish they had that level of hype of, oh, well, if people don't like it, they'll go away. This is reality, where people are held accountable. And if you disagree with that, I don't know what to tell you. But for those of you who want to keep scrutinizing this, succinctly, what are the main 4 reasons I said why the Long Night prequel is an inherently bad idea? Or at least these are 4 major challenges. I don't know, if Martin was trying to do it, he might have been able to pull something off, but this isn't him, this is Jane Goldman. What are the 4 big problems which may or may not have solutions? Point 1, it isn't based on anything George R. R. Martin wrote. And a lot of people are shocked at that when you tell them, even now, like, he didn't write anything on this. There is no prequel story waiting to be told. And on top of that, he's come out and said how little he's involved in this. It isn't even, oh, well, in broad strokes, I told them an outline. He didn't tell them an outline. The outline itself, the characters, everything is from Jane Goldman. And his involvement was after she finished all of this, they'd ask him advice on stuff now and again, which they didn't have to follow. Just, oh, what would you call this? I guess this, just like TV Dorn, where he was technically an advisor. That's nothing. and they don't need to follow that. So but I covered this in the full videos of this isn't Martin, it isn't even his outline. Yes, some other prequels aren't based on prequel narratives he wrote. There's some that are prequel novellas he wrote, like The Dance of the Dragons. But there are others that are loosely part of the World of Ice and Fire, like the Blackfire Rebellion, or Valyria, or something, where there isn't a prequel novella in dialogue for that, even on the scale of Fire and Blood and the prequel novellas for The Dance of the Dragons. But there's outlines for, like, the Blackfire Rebellion in the World of Ice and Fire. Compared to that, Long Night, there isn't anything 8,000 years ago. Martin never intended to set a prequel narrative in this era. HBO really wanted to cash in on the names Stark, Lannister, and on the White Walkers. Which brings me to point 2. It's a rehash of the White Walker storyline. And given how bad that was in Season 8, how much buzz is there still for this? Now, I made these videos, this playlist, before Season 8 aired, and I said it's a rehash of the White Walker storyline, and now that everyone thinks they're boring, I think in the books they're still exciting, but the TV version of them anyway is just this Keystone Army with, hey, it's the Night King, he doesn't talk. I don't know how much new they can do with that. I think they picked it on hype, and you even see a few desperate people saying, I can even sympathize with the ones who are genuinely interested in the White Walkers. It's, you see people on YouTube and elsewhere who really want a White Walker prequel to somehow redeem them. It can redeem the White Walkers. They want a do-over. They want a do-over of specifically the White Walkers storyline from later seasons, but they don't want to come outright and admit, I think they should remake the final season with better writers or something, or I hope there's another adaptation of this 20 years from now. Like I've seen, like, the same people go, a remake is crazy, but let's get a prequel that'll redeem the White Walkers. What do you mean? That means you want a remake. You don't want a new story exploring them, you want a do-over. And it's weird, it's just the same people saying the same things. Thankfully, I'm not really seeing a lot of that. It's just when the few people who are doing that, it's really, you can see how they're not taking the failure of the final season well. But most of the reaction I've seen, though, is that no one really cares about the Night King anymore, a character not from the books, who they invented for the TV series and hyped up. And, book fans trying to tell them this isn't from the books, this isn't from the books, there isn't going to be some amazing revelation about the Night King in Season 8, that he's a time-traveling Bran Stark, or that he's really Jon Snow's father, or various other things, that there was no other shoe waiting to drop, the Night King is just a cool-looking ice zombie who doesn't talk. And again, the whole people projecting all their hopes onto it, well, that's over now. The bubble has burst, and all the crazy fan theories go away. So, they wanted someone for Kit Harington to play against. So, it's not based on anything Martin wrote. It's a rehash of the White Walkers, which are a very one-note zombie storyline. They're not interesting villains if they're just death zombie, ice zombies, an army of death. Point 3, there aren't really characters from this era. There's just a sentence or two, Martin has said this. Yeah, I didn't really write anything this time period. So when we're dealing with, why is this relevant now, rehashing it, when we're dealing with filming spy reports, it's not like, oh wow, here's a spy photo of a could-be Oberyn Martell when we were looking at, like, spy photos from filming Season 4. Guys, most of the people in this, in Long Night, will be original characters. Season 8 of the TV show threw out the Prince That Was Promised prophecy about Azor Ahai, so would a casual TV-only audience member really care about this? I mean, do people on the street, watching in Burlington Bar and stuff, really, would they know who Bran the Builder is just from watching the TV show? The people who do not watch the cartoon stuff. I mean, Lan the Clever was never mentioned by name in the TV show. And even then, we only know so much about him, the founder of House Lannister. And even then, what little we know of them from the books are sound bites at best. They aren't really narratives. There aren't narratives about them. And I want to stress this. They're separate from that, if there isn't a lot on them. They were never meant to be part of the same narrative. Bran the Builder, Lan the Clever, during God's Grief, the ancestor of House Baratheon, they were separate stories. They were never meant to interact. They lived in different regions of the continent, perhaps centuries apart on top of that. Different regions separated by centuries, and they didn't interact with each other. And we suspect the prequel show is going to try to shoehorn them in together. Shoehorn them all together and be very contrived in the way they do it. Of, oh, look at the odds, all these people happen to meet together when you see a really contrived comic book crossover. Then point 4, and this is more general but pervasive, world building. Very little familiar is there 8,000 years ago. Physical locations don't exist yet. King's Landing isn't there. It's an empty field with 3 hills. The Wall isn't there. Some form of proto-Winterfell would be there as like a ring fort or something, but the novelty of that will wear off fairly quickly, that it isn't as big as it is now. At Casterly Rock also would be there. It's not, they didn't tunnel in as much. I mean, obviously it's a natural formation. That's still impressive. Like, yeah, there would be a Casterly Rock there, but the TV series barely showed Casterly Rock. So again, how much hype would there be for seeing Casterly Rock from the casual viewers who make up the bulk of HBO's viewership? And a lot of cultural stuff isn't there on top of that. Like, there's no Faith of the Seven. There's no Knights. We know very little about what the society of the First Men is like, which were their version of the Celts. And we know nothing, truly nothing, in terms of public information about what this prequel story is going to be like, as it isn't really based on anything Martin wrote. He never intended to set a prequel in this era, 8,000 years before the main series. So keep that in mind, that as we get these filming reports, it's not to confirm something I know from the Dance of the Dragons prequel novella of, oh, this is Rhaenyra, oh, this must be Tumbleton, one of the other locations where a battle was. We're trying to parse out what the heck the story is. What are they doing? This is an original story. It's not an adaptation anymore. So, all that introduction out of the way. Sorry, it's just catch up for all the new people. My subscriber count doubled during Season 8, and the original video series I made on The Long Night was last summer, almost a full year ago, so I want to expose everyone to that. And it's not just the introduction for this video. This video itself is going to be the first in a series on... We're in the filming process of The Long Night prequel now, not just the casting one, so... Introduction to the filming series, just wanted to recap all that. We're done. So, first major point here now. Overview of filming locations in Northern Ireland. If you're not really familiar with all the place names and stuff, well, broadly, this isn't the full version. The fully detailed, every single place they ever filmed version, that's up on Game of Thrones Wiki on the page titled Filming Locations. This is just the broad view and stuff relevant to the Long Night prequel. Well, there's 6 counties in Northern Ireland, 5 of which are in a circle around the big lake Lough Neagh in the center. And starting in the northeast and going clockwise, the counties are County Antrim, County Down, County Armagh, County Tyrone, and County Derry. And then off to it's called County Derry. And then off to the southwest of Tyrone, you have County Fermanagh. Their base of operations is in the city of Belfast, which is on the border between Antrim and Down on the east coast. So maybe 90% of their filming locations are in Antrim and Down, within a good drive of Belfast. In the city of Belfast, they are based at Titanic Studios, featuring the paint hall, the biggest internal studio in Europe, where they painted the Titanic. That's why it's called Titanic Studios. So that's where they have all their huge internal sets, on sound stages like the Iron Throne Room or the Erie's Throne Room, stuff where, on the one hand, we can't see inside what they're doing. But on the other hand, so much activity is there because it's the hub of everything that you might catch a spy photo of a cast member walking between buildings in full costume if you're really lucky. Though they've been trying to find ways around that. But, it's in the middle of a city. There's only so much they can do. So going through the list here, what are the major recurring locations which we might see again? Not all of them, just the really important ones. In County Down, you have Castle Ward, which they've been using as the generic fields of central Westeros. Not the deserts of Dorne or the moors of the north, just somewhere in the Riverlands, which they've reused, a dozen times for different locations for, this is Robb Stark's army camp, somewhere in the Riverlands. Now this is Tywin Lannister's army camp, somewhere in the Riverlands. So that's generic fields of central Westeros. Well, what if you want an area that's a little forested? For that, they use nearby Tollymore Forest for generic forests of Westeros. When Arya's going through the Riverlands of the Brotherhood Without Banners and it's a little wooded somewhere, they'll be in Tollymore Forest. Between the two of them, that covers most of, I'm thinking, what you think of generic Westeros, I'm thinking of in terms of a video game where you go, well, this is the grasslands level, and this is the forest level. You got Tollymore and you got Castle Ward. Another major location, which actually hasn't come up in the prequel yet, is Banbridge in County Down, specifically because it's a location of the Linen Mill Studios, which are a major secondary hub of production after Titanic Studios itself in Belfast. They built a couple things at Linen Mill Studios there. They built the Harrenhal exterior sets. It's also where they set up the big ship prop. That they only built one fully realized war galley set, not just a skiff. I'm talking a war galley where you can walk from stem to stern. And, it doesn't make sense to custom build one for the Ironborn, then the Targaryens, then a merchant ship. They just redress the same set as best they can. It's ridiculously expensive. And they don't actually sail it on the open sea, guys. It's in a giant green screen room, and they add in the ocean behind it, so the actors can move around on it. So frequently we can tell, looks like they might be doing a naval battle or something, because there's a lot of activity at Banbridge today. That isn't necessarily always the case, though, because it's not just the ship. They also have, Harrenhal there. But so far for the prequel, the reporters have been saying there's no activity at Linen Mill Studios yet, so who knows. But that's another one of the big hubs of activity. Another one of note in County Down is Saintfield, which was also frequently used for alternate shots of Robb's army camp. Again, this is all near Castle Ward. Then you go up to County Antrim, and you've assuredly heard of this in the Inside the Episode videos, Magra Quarry, which is this, it's a big rock quarry where if it's something too big to fit inside of a soundstage at Titanic Studios, when we need to build a fully realized external set, they build it at Magra Quarry. First and foremost, since Season 1, that's where they built the fully realized Castle Black set, since Season 1, where it's 360, you can go anywhere in it. And later on, it's also where they set up Hardhome. And for Season 8, when they just blew the whole budget on that battle, it's where they built that fully realized Winterfell exterior. That before that, you had a castle wall or a single tower which stood in for the whole castle, which then you'd see as a matte painting. They built Winterfell there for Season 8, so they could have a battle around it. So that's where they build, we need an external giant location for a battle around a castle or something. There's starting to be some activity there for the prequel, we've heard, but nothing big. Another major one is Ballantoy Harbor up on the northern side there, which, these craggy coasts, it's what they use for the Iron Islands. Starting in Season 2, when everything, the craggy Iron Islands, and it's fun that their local tourism board goes, visit the Iron Islands, come to Ballantoy Harbor. So that's nice. The big one for the purposes of this prequel, though, is also in County Antrim, Glenarith, which was the location of Runestone briefly in seasons 5 and 6, the seat of House Royce in the Vale. So they're not craggy mountains, they're these lush mountain valleys, very green. So we've been hearing reports of a lot of Long Night prequel filming up there. That doesn't necessarily mean Runestone is coming back, because again, like Magra and Quarry was multiple things, Castle Ward was multiple things. It's just they're filming something that involves lush mountain valleys. So we'll see. So far the big ones are, we're getting reports out of Titanic Studios, Glenarith, Galbally specifically, but that's a town in Glenarith. Bits of stuff at Morin, and moving west from that, there's been a lot of activity at the Marble Arch Caves for filming. That if you go west, they only filmed in County Armagh exactly once, for the scene in the River Run Godswood when Robb Stark executes Lord Karstark in Season 3, and they never returned there, so I'm leaving that off the map. I felt, justifies cropping the map to just the eastern half so I can zoom in on it more for Antrim and down, and bits of Derry. So they filmed once in Armagh, they have never filmed in Tyrone, then all the way to the west you have County Fermanagh, which is, it's mountainous, and there's a lot of caves there, and there's this whole, National Trust cave system called the Marble Arch Caves Global Geopark. And back in Season 3, they filmed there for the fight between Beric Dondarrion and the Hound at their cave hideout, Hollow Hill. Specifically, you might have heard of this. The specific cave they filmed in was Palnagallam Cave in Belmore Forest, but that's part of the Marble Arch Caves complex, so I'm going to refer to it by the broader name. And there's been a ton of activity up there. You see road signs, they're blocking it off, so they're using it very extensively for the Long Night prequel filming. So that's the geography. Now, moving month by month here, the chronology of prequel set reports catching up so far. Just everything from April to June, where we had vague rumblings to when we're actually seeing things. Around Titanic Studios, the Marble Arch Caves, and around Glenarith. Starting on April 13th, and if you're listening to this, I'm mostly showing spy photos in this, so a lot of people say, we just listened to it. Check out the spy photos I'm going to start showing here. They get more detailed as we go. Starting on April 13th, there were rumblings of you could see indistinct sets at the Titanic Studios in Belfast. Then around April 21st, there were indistinct sets at Glenarith, which was Runestone, just simple, generic, it's a medieval village building. It could be anything from any TV show, for the fact we know it's Game of Thrones. Nothing too distinctive, no distinctive markings or sigils. Then on May 14th, there were starting to be vague rumors that filming of some kind had begun in Northern Ireland. But, what level of filming? We knew that, like Naomi Watts wasn't in Northern Ireland. A lot of the cast members weren't. Maybe this was stuff with extras. Landscape shots, just for, establishing shots, just getting things set up. But things were gearing up. Glenarith, again, we started getting more photos around Glenarith, which was Runestone, and The Sun said that filming began around May 1st, but I don't think that was filming, because HBO said it started officially in the middle of June. There's pre-production set up, so whatever. Splitting hairs and not really relevant at this point. Preliminary stuff, and it was around May 14th that word started filtering out from people working on the sets in Northern Ireland, referring to the prequel as named Blood Moon. More on that later, because that was later confirmed. But around that, we first heard rumblings of that around May 14th. Then we started getting these nice spy photos of there was a lot of cave set construction at Titanic Studios in Belfast, that they're filming on location in caves in the west, in Fermanagh, at the Marble Arch, but they're also building these giant internal cave sets, for the insides of caves that aren't natural. So This must feature that extensively, which is no surprise. We know that children of the forest are very prevalent in this time period and in this story, and that they must live in caves. So, no surprise there. It'll prominently feature cave sets. Then on June 3rd, we started getting some Twitter shots, from people following the Twitter and the Instagram. Twitter shots of cast members out and about in Northern Ireland, such as, Jamie Campbell Bower saying, "Hooray, I'm in Northern Ireland, ready to start a new adventure." So, actual cast members from social media, we could tell, were starting to show up in early June. Though when they started filming, it's harder to say. Then on June 19th, Belfast Live reported that Prequel crew were working around the Marble Arch Caves Geopark for an extensive 2-week-long shoot in the cave system. And not just in the cave system, but in the National Forest Park around it. Which generally, it seems the Marble Arch area filming was from June 17th to June 26th. So there was a lot of stuff there. Now, an interesting thing, the big news that popped up from all this preliminary filming and setup was around June 22nd. There started to be photos coming in from set reporters and spy photos of people out and about in Northern Ireland from these filming locations who were starting to see these orange mammoth signs as road markers for people. And apparently this is what the prequel uses. The original Game of Thrones, when they needed to have a sign saying this is a Game of Thrones filming location, or hey, we're filming here, they used these pink signs. They have to be bright colors so a car can see them at night. Hot pink signs saying GOT, Game of Thrones, on them. But the new ones, apparently, for Long Night, are orange and have a mammoth cartoon on them. So there was much excitement about this. I do love mammoths in the show. We need those elephants. And overall, there were more megafauna in this time period. I talked about that in my other video. What are the major selling points if you wanted to do a Long Night prequel? Well, this is the era of magic, and it's also the time period when there were a lot more megafauna that are rare later, like mammoths and direwolves. George R. R. Martin actually talked about that in a more recent interview, but I'm going to talk about that in the sequel video to this, Martin's exact comments on the mammoths in it. It does seem we'll be seeing some mammoths in this, but we're not really sure what exactly. But again, like the giants riding mammoths, we know this. It's not new information, it's something specific, but hey, that's exciting. I'm not sure if they're south of the Neck or just in the north around Proto-Winterfell. Who knows how far widespread mammoths would be. So we started seeing the mammoth signs. And, side note, this is also when set photos, you'd see a few shots of construction trucks that had big Warner Brothers logos on the side, WB. Just side note that it's AT&T just bought HBO's parent company, Time Warner, and recombined all their entertainment division into the new thing, Warner Media. So that was in the news the past few months. So if you see all these Warner Brothers logos on set, that's reflecting the change in ownership, which is interesting. So the big thing from all this preliminary filming is, wow, they're filming a lot in Marble Arch Caves and Glenarith, and there's a lot of caves, and there's mammoths on the signs. Next big section, and this is when real hardcore filming started. When filming began in earnest in late June, and we actually started getting some spy photos of substance. Well, a few. Around June 24th, I think, is when we heard at least that filming had begun, the last week of June. And there were actual shots of extras in costumes, though so far at least, at this point, all we really saw was hairstyles, because it takes so long to put those together. Again, they throw a cloak on or something so we can't see what they're wearing too well. For those of you who are costumes fans, trying to figure out all the designs and stuff, mostly what we really had to go on were we saw some hairstyles from men and from women. But it's interesting, because it was different from what we've seen before, that the look they seem to be going for men is that they're clean-shaven, but with long hair worn tied into a single braid that runs down the back of their neck. Not a Khal Drogo size down to their waist thing, but a ponytail of some substance braided for a man. Contrast this with how Sean Bain as Ned Stark had fairly long ear-length hair, or that it would go down the back of your neck, or like Jon Snow had long hair, the famous Jon Snow hair, and wasn't clean-shaven, that the men all seemed consistently clean-shaven with a single braid falling down their back, whereas women also seem to braid their hair, but it's swept upwards to a point, that kind of style, where it's braided up. I'm sorry, I am not a costumes, much less a hair person. I don't know much of the terms for this, but again, the idea is the first men are like their version of the Celts. So I don't know if they're going for a classical Greco-Roman really wouldn't fit their region. Are they going for Celtic? We haven't really seen much of the costumes yet. The one thing I did think was odd, or notable from just, we didn't really see their costumes yet, it's just some of their hairstyles and their heads without taking that much of the costume off, is you actually see the women in these shots wearing earrings. And you don't really think about it. I went, wait a minute. Have any of the other regions in the Seven Kingdoms or past seasons of the TV show, like Marjorie, Tyrell, or Cersei, women don't wear earrings in Game of Thrones? Nor are they described that way in the books. I mean, the books make scattered mention of people in Essos are so diverse, some of them wear earrings, but you think about it, it wasn't really in the Lord of the Rings movies either, like Galadriel or Arwen or Eowyn. They wear their hair down. They don't really have women with earrings or anything. And the way these look in these spy photos, it reminds me of, like, have you ever seen like a Viking hoard in a museum where they have the jewelry of a noblewoman, like from the Vikings show, or like when you see the jewelry of Helen of Troy from some Mycenaean dig where they find the jewelry of a noblewoman. Or like Minoan stuff, or Viking, Trojan, where you see women wearing elaborate earrings and something, very, beautifully made artwork and metalwork on these things, that just, this has never been a part of the visual style of this TV show before. So just noted, oh, that's something new and different. I asked the nice costuming channel on YouTube, Costume Co., please check her out, and she confirmed, yeah, there have never been earrings in this show before, earring jewelry. It reminds me of that Helen of Troy look for what they're doing. Maybe it's more of a Viking Celtic thing, I don't know, but that was one thing we could pick apart of, oh, their jewelry and hairstyling is very different. But probably the most interesting shot we got from this phase of June filming was this really good spy photo of a couple of sets of rusted armor. I don't know if these are all meant to appear like this on screen, or this is just where the props department stacked them up. Like, are people supposed to be wearing these, or is this just supposed to be rusted ruins on a battlefield or something? I don't know. And that brings up a separate issue that I did mention in the other prior videos. The first men didn't have iron weapons, iron and steel in Long Night. They consistently say that they had only bronze weapons. This was the Bronze Age of Westeros. And if you follow me on Twitter, I'm sorry I was mistaken in this. I said, when this came out, I went, they didn't have plate armor then. They only had bronze discs sewn together like the Thenns do. I was wrong. Yes, the Thenns can only make plate armor. They don't have plate armor. They just have bronze discs. But in the books, House Royce of the Vale, it's said that they have relic bronze armor as like a breastplate. So yeah, it is possible for them to have a suit of bronze armor like that. You think like Trojan War scale bronze armor. I'm not sure how much they'd use it in Westeros itself, which was kind of primitive, but okay, they'd have rusted bronze armor there. But why is there a bunch of rusted armor there? I have no idea. Is it supposed to be... Because the Long Night happens 2,000 years after the initial wars between the humans and the Children of the Forest, so maybe this is relic armor worn by centuries-old undead whites that get resurrected, or is it just strewn around a battlefield? I don't know. So this raises questions. So the two things from June are the hairstyles and jewelry and this rusted armor. What could it be? Well, a few other production notes from just production was actually starting, and we'd see people going in and out of buildings in late June. A couple of crew members are back from the original show. Just, there's only so many horse trainers in Northern Ireland, so, like, Camilla Napris was the horse master on all 8 years of Game of Thrones, and it's confirmed she'll be returning as the horse master on the prequels. And that doesn't mean a cavalry charge, guys. I mean, like, she's been there since season 1. You didn't have cavalry charges back then. It's, you need horses for everything. Like, when Catelyn Stark is just riding a horse in season 1 into King's Landing, you need a horse trainer to be on set to do that. So that's why you have a horse master there. So with basic stuff. Horses are like their cars, So, but Camilla Napris will be back. She was a horse trainer. It's nice to see, like, the electricians or the prop masters, not even art stuff, just people working around. Because when you see all those behind-the-scenes videos, they're nice. Speaking of which, this wasn't announced, but purely from spy photos, and I figured this out just from the leakers posting this on Twitter. It went, oh, who's that blonde woman? I went, hey, cool, that's Naomi Liston. Naomi Liston is back. If you've seen the Last Watch documentary movie or the clips I made from it on my channel, Naomi Liston is the locations manager, where she's not the producer, the line producer who orders them to build everything. She's the one who actually has to set everything up. Like, okay, this is the holding pen for the extras. We have to have so many porta potties. Wait, no, they've frozen solid. If you saw the Last Night documentary, she was amazing because she was not taking bullshit from anyone, and when things are falling apart, she would let them know, and, wasn't blind hyping it. She was like, this makes no sense. Why are we filming in winter? All the pipes have burst. You idiots built everything in the middle of Belfast, and there's a Ferris wheel here. People can see what we're doing. So Naomi Liston was great, and I'm really happy to see her back. I hope she gets involved in a couple other Prequel things. So Camilla Napris is back, the horse lady. Naomi Liston is back. That brought a smile to my face. There's a couple of other minor names filling out. If you check Internet Movie Database for cast and crew, but I didn't recognize any of them. And more cast and crew started filtering in the last few days of June. Like, Sheila Atim first appeared in Belfast on June 28th, and Naomi Watts only showed up, like, July 1st, so, more or less, maybe 2 days earlier, maybe 2 days later, so, by July 1st, we think all of the major cast members were actually in Northern Ireland on set and beginning to film hardcore scenes. Not just, hey, let's film a crowd shot. I think they were warming up to that. Like, the hardcore, big core cast members, that seems to have been happening starting July 1st. And the big filming in Northern Ireland was from July 1st through July 14th. Ish, I think. Now, the interesting thing that came out of this time period is that, getting back to another big section, the title was confirmed, Blood Moon. That about 6 weeks before, we had heard rumors that, on set everyone's calling it Blood Moon. And we're like, well, what does that mean? And nothing's confirmed yet. But there is a new wave of spy photos starting June 28th that confirmed there's all of these logos saying Blood Moon on it, drawn in the style of Game of Thrones. So it confirms that it's what they're using, though we're kind of confused. Is this a production code name? Like, Star Wars A New Hope was called Blue Harvest when it was filming, so is this a filming name? Or is it the name of the pilot episode specifically, or is it the name of the TV series? If you don't like the logo, this is just an early version in paperwork. Like, the original Game of Thrones logos from filming on the pilot days weren't that similar to the later ones. But it is almost certain now that the full series title is, in fact, Blood Moon, to the point that I'm going to treat that as the title on Game of Thrones Wiki until proven otherwise, because it's what people are searching for now. But there are still some issues with that, the name Blood Moon. First, we can't even tell if it's meant to be one word or two. Many have jumped to assume it's two based on the logo. I don't know how many other people scrutinize this, but if you zoom in on this schedule sheet they managed to get a spy photo of, it gives the name Blood Moon as one word. So that's what I'm going to use for wiki purposes. Maybe they would have spelled Game of Thrones as one word with no spaces. I'm not sure. I'm going to call it Blood Moon as one word until proven otherwise, which we'll learn soon enough. But, it's not like they're lying to us. It's spy photos. We're trying to glean info about it. That's not what the issue is. The bigger issue, second here, is Why the heck aren't they just calling it The Long Night? When this is the title that George R. R. Martin said he wanted it to be in his blog posts. I'm not the first one to point this out. It shows just how little George R. R. Martin is actually involved in this project when they don't even use the name he wanted. Think of what that implies. And third, this is silly. The term blood moon, one word or two, I've used electronic search to check this. The term blood moon has never appeared in any of the A Song of Ice and Fire series. It isn't referring to anything from established story, but just something they made up. Separate, for that matter, a couple of fans I've seen have launched the criticism that it sounds like moonblood, which is the polite term they use for menstrual blood when a woman is flowering in the books. They never used the term moonblood in the TV show, so I myself honestly wasn't reminded of that. I'm a guy, so because, blood moon is also, I wasn't reminded of that because blood moon is a real-life term for a type of lunar phase. So I don't think, purely separate from that some people think it sounds like moonblood, I actually don't. Just, it's blood moon. Okay, that isn't a term from the A Song of Ice and Fire series. Why should I be excited about that compared to Long Night? I've seen various people saying they thought it was a stupid name. Roris thought it was a stupid name on her YouTube channel. Ideas of Ice and Fire, big channel on YouTube. He had a whole video just devoted to him hating on that he thinks Blood Moon is a stupid name. So I'm going to link that at the end of this. Check that out. It's not from the books at all. And Martin openly said he wants to call it something else. And I just think it sounds inherently goofy, but frankly, the name is the least of our worries. It's the implications of how little he's involved in this that are troubling me. And the last big section I want to cover here is, in late June going into July, we managed to get another spy photo, which, I don't know how they got this from this close to Titanic Studios. Someone had pinned up a schedule on a poster board there, and someone got a legible picture of it, saying it's a calendar saying these are the filming dates for where they're going to do various things. Unfortunately, the names on the calendar were fairly generic and not really revealing. But I want to go through that. Just what is the relative pace of things? And again, I'm sorry, I was writing this up on June 29th and June 30th to post it. And then my neighborhood lost power in a storm, so I'm backlogged by 2 weeks on this, but I'm catching up now in the middle of July. That someone took a photo of this calendar, and what can we glean from it? Well, apart from that it says Blood Moon on it, which is apparently now at least the code name, which is what we're going to call it. If you look really closely at the fine print, the people doing this, it's fun when you're trying to chase through the paper trail. People in trying to find out the registered trademarks and the new holding companies they're making for, they're trying to hide it from us, but there's this new company that's the one that's ordering all the parts and set construction materials for the Long Night prequel and has a new name, but once you find what it is, you can find what are they ordering. That the production company legally that they're using to buy things, the new one they formed, is called Endless Winter Productions. This is in contrast with, up until this point, the production company for Game of Thrones, I knew this, but I had forgotten, is technically called Fire and Blood Productions, since Season 1. When you have to buy stuff, for building things, Fire and Blood Productions. It's been renamed Endless Winter Productions, but, and people have checked, they have literally the same street address. It's just, the shell game of the holding companies, so it's fine. It's just, so if we're seeing a new report saying they're ordering a bunch of parts for Endless Winter Productions, we know it's part of this prequel. But on the calendar itself, what does it say they're filming and when? Well, June 11th, W.I. Court. That's assuredly Winterfell Court. I think we're seeing Proto-Winterfell when it's just a ring for it, but the rest doesn't say much. It's just June 12th, Village. June 13th, it actually said two things. It said inn. Oh, great, there's a medieval inn. That could be anything. And also Enclave. June 14th, Barn. Then June 15th through 20th, Enclave. I suspect that the Enclave must be like an enclave of Children of the Forest in that cave system they were filming in. The interior cave system they built at Titanic Studios. That must be the Enclave, I think. Then, this is the most interesting one. The only one that it's not just something immediately obvious. June 21st. SI plus RA house. Please help me with this in the comments. What could this mean? It is, well, if WI is Winterfell, if it's just the first two letters or something, I can't think of any proper names relevant to this time period that would be written as SI or RA. For that matter, maybe that's the name of the director or production assistant that's handling a given house, and it's not an in-universe set of initials. So who knows what that is? That is the most intriguing one. SI plus RA house. And rounding out the rest of this, you have June 24th, Long Hall. June 25th, Fort Hall and Bathhouse. And anywhere would have a bathhouse. People take baths. I think Winterfell already has a bathhouse in the novels, just not like a huge one. Like Harrenhal has a bathhouse. Then June 26th, it said oubliette, which is a kind of dungeon. That's the kind of dungeon cell where the only entrance is a hatch in the ceiling, so they have to lower a rope to let you in and out, so it's harder to escape. Again, that could mean anything. Then June 27th to 29th, Terraces. I'm not sure what they'd be filming on Terraces. And then overall, on the bottom, it says June 11th to July 10, Northern Ireland. And then, July 15th, Italy. And we think the Italy shoot, apparently they're filming in Italy. There's a whole announcement of they're going to be filming in Gaeta, Italy, in Latium, which is south of Rome, north of Naples. And we're pretty sure that the shoot for that's going on from July 15th to July 18th. But because it's out in the open, we got a lot more really informative photos of that in the past 2 days, and I'm playing catch-up on this. And then Martin started talking about stuff which also seemed irrelevant to it, that it seemed to be stuff involving Starks and Lannisters. So, this video is already really long. I'm going to split this off and make a sequel video that is a good deal shorter, because I know this is over an hour long. This is the catch-up for the setting of this, and now for the past, April to June, for the past 3 months of news, guys. And now I can just hit the ground running, and whenever we see like a photo of Naomi Watts in costume or something, I can point that out. So by the time this is posted online, if you got to the end here, I'll already have the sequel video up, talking about, well, what's all these great new photos we got out of Italy.